In this video, we'll learn about two methods, str and rep, that help us printing the object content in a nice way. Remember, so far we learned about creating a class, and we provided the init method. The init method is used and is called automatically to create an object. For example, when you create an object here in an implicit way, this function will be called to initialize the object content for us or to assign for us. By the way, the init method, which is starting with 2 underscores, ending with 2 underscores, people call it dunder init. Dunder here is like a double under for the double underscores that we have, just in case you found people are using it. Going back to line 10 here, when we printed the most object, we noticed that what is printed is the memory address, which isn't that useful for us. We needed something that expresses the content. Here is what happens behind the scene. Python searches for str method underscore underscore str underscore underscore method. If not provided, it will be if provided, it will be used to represent the object. If not provided, it will search for another method named underscore underscore rep underscore underscore. If not provided, it will print some default representation like the memory address you see here. These two functions need to provide mainly to return a string to be used in an implicit way, in a proper way, without an error, as we will see now. So here I started to provide the str method or the dunder str and provided some representation here. Now let's create an object from it. If you try to print the object, it will print the message here, which is very nice. Or if you try to print the str, it's going again str of object, it will represent using the returning the string from here. You can also call the underscore underscore str, but you shouldn't. The default way should be using the str itself. Now, what happens if I didn't return a string from the str method? If you are going to call it explicitly, no problem will happen. But this isn't actually how we should use it. We should call the str method itself, which will complain because this return must be string. So stick to using string representation for the return of the str and for the rep function. Now moving to the rep function, I'm now providing a very similar output. I'm just adding here a couple of asterisks to distinguish it. If you try now to print the most, what happens is Python will search, do you have str function? No. If not, use the repr function. Do you have repr function? Yes. Then use it. Observe here, printing most, str, repr, all of them is printing the same thing. But however, be careful from the following. Let's say that you're only providing the str function. If you try to print the repr of most, it will print again the memory address. The rule is, if repr isn't provided, just print the default representation, not the str representation. And this is very critical. Now observe that most is calling repr if there is no most, but repr will not call most. That's why it is very useful to always provide the repr representation. So repr is the right function that you should provide almost with every object that you implement. Okay, in this scenario, we have both the str and we have the repr. If you printed the str of the object or printed the object directly, it's going to use the str method. If you call the repr, it will use the repr method. I hope so far you recognize about what's going behind the scene, who is calling whom. But there is an interesting question here. Why do we have both str and repr? Why don't we have just one function, the repr function, and that's all? Here is the best practice or the intention behind that. The str function is mainly intended for users and customers. Imagine that some user is going to print the output here. That's it. The goal here is to provide something that is very readable. Something when the user read, he completely understands it. Something like employee Mustafa is 33 years old. On the other side, the repr function is intended mainly for developers and specifically for debugging and logging purposes. So it should be unambiguous and it should be complete. One of the some of the common uses is try to write the output of the repr, something that can help us if we copied and pasted it to construct an object. Observe here, if I printed str, it will print this statement. If I printed repr, it will print for you this statement, which is, by the way, a valid Python syntax. You can take this line of code and print it and use it to build the object. Again, the target of str is to be readable, something that the customer will read. But the target of repr, something that will be complete, that we can make use of it during debugging or logging, something that unambiguous. So do not miss some important variables or print them in an ugly way. This is mainly the motivation. Again, provide repr for every class. This is very important for logging and debugging purposes. One last thing, I know that so far we are using the PyCharm IDE. If you try to write the code in a Python console that you find in the tab below and write to print the most, it actually is going to use the repr. This is where the repr can be used in an implicit way. Again, it seems more like a debugging mode. That's why the repr here is the default one. If you don't know how to use the console, this is totally okay. I just wanted to tell you that there are some situations where the repr is coded in an implicit way here. That's all.